If someone's listening and thinking, why does it matter what someone said thousands of years ago? And that's probably someone who's not religious that's thinking that. Thinking, why are we fighting over the interpretation of things that people said? They're not around today. We live in a different time. We've evolved. We have greater consciousness, more information. Why are we focusing so much on what was written so long ago?
Cam is saying so much of the Western world is based on Christianity and patriarchic values. And if you find out the entire foundation has been a mistranslation and it's gone skewed, and then we can recorrect that, the domino effect of what it'll mean, even though it happened 2,000 years ago, the domino effect of correcting that, getting the glitch out of what happened, is going to be the most transformative domino effect there is. So it'll transform. What does it mean to really be a Christ follower or a Christian? And what does that mean today? Because as Andrew Lindsay says, look where it got us today. Look where we're at now. Huh. So even though it happened a long time ago, if you're Christian or not Christian, once we fix this glitch, then it's a very, very powerful thing that will transform our future.
Right. Because ultimately Christians want to follow Jesus Christ.
Right.
So if provided with the right information, they might make different choices.
Exactly.
The glitch. Clarify that a little more for me.
I just kind of said that recently.
Why was there a glitch? What was the incentives? Was there ties between religion and animal agriculture that many years ago?
Well, yeah.
How did this come about?
Well, I was thinking, putting in context, 2,000 years ago, this Temple of Jerusalem was not only a place of worship, so it's like the Vatican, it's also a place of all the commerce, not just some of the commerce. It was in Jerusalem, basically in the middle of a desert. It's not like they were selling all these vegetables and fruits and cars and bicycles and things. It was, the entire commerce was based on killing animals, sacrificing animals for money. So it's just a mass slaughterhouse. So now you have basically like Wall Street. You have the Vatican, and then you also have a governmental structure there, which is, so now you have the White House, or a whole government building, all packed in one single framework of a temple. And so it's so powerful that not only, when he was shutting this down, he knew what he was getting himself into, that it was really shutting down the entire fabric of the system that was controlling everything at that time. And so the glitch being, what was the intention and what was really happening at that time, and what did he do that they still talk about today, the money changers, the den of thieves. And if we find out that what he did 4 days before he got crucified, what he really truly did, and their true intentions of him and the disciples that were doing this along with him, that glitch being removed and the veil removed, like, oh, wow, that's what was going on. That's what he meant. That's what was going on. That was their true intentions of how the commandment should be, thou shalt not kill, should be do unto others. It was like da-da-da-da-da. And so removing that glitch of the mistranslation and the veil will just to get clarity of...
Will this be new information to most Christians, or is this information that people are likely to have come across, but because of some type of implicit bias, they choose to ignore it?
I think it'll be a little bit of both. I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of Christians out there that don't even really read their Bible that much. So any information can be new information to them. And that's not pointing a finger in any way. It's just the nature of it. Sometimes people are Christian, but they only go to church on, say, Christmas or something like that. So, but then there's a lot of Christians that it'll be information they've heard, but ideally seen with new eyes, because that was my story. Mm-hmm. I grew up reading the Bible a lot and taking it very, very seriously. And so it's been a process of the colors of the story almost becoming vivid, or in a different way, realizing I might have been colorblind and seeing orange as green, mm-hmm. In a way. And therefore, just completely, when you, it's one of those things that when you see it, you can't unsee it, like the images you can look at and it looks like a scattered mosaic, but then you unfocus your eyes and you can see a face in it or whatever. And then after that, it's almost like you can't unsee that face. That's what it's like for me. That's what it's been like for me, is that once you see the thread in the Bible, and then let alone the historical documentation around that, you just can't unsee it. It's too powerful. Every little piece of the puzzle fits together in a way. And the big challenge is you can only talk about one piece of the puzzle at a time. And so the real challenge is to get people to listen long enough to
How do
hear.
you show the big picture?
Yeah.
How has this changed your relationship with the church?
Well, years ago, I was, for many years, I was a gospel musician. It was my full, devotion, but it was also my career. And I basically did step away from that to be able to honor what I was going through, ask these questions, spend more time on that. And so I've stepped quite a bit away from the organized side of church and religion, but I still have carried, my faith and my desire through the whole process. And if anything, I feel more connected to my heritage and my tradition than I ever have through this process. And I'm excited to keep doing that. And I'm excited to bring that back into the church.
Why do you feel more connected? Is that because the interpretation that you've sort of unearthed is a more beautiful one?
Yeah, it's more beautiful. In one sense, I love the process of just kind of revelation, of discovery, of epiphany, seeing the dots come together. And so there's a satisfying thing with that just in general. But I think it's the experience of certain cognitive dissonance kind of melting away and almost feeling my brain come fully online with my heart and my conscience that I didn't realize was distorted before.
And you can be a Christian and be a good person, but you're still not immune from cognitive dissonance.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
What do you think the strongest rebuttals will be, at least to this Christian part of the story?
Well, I mean, the first thing straight away when arguing if Christ was, by doing this act and being a part of this Nazarene movement, if he was actually a part of that practice, abstaining from eating animals or flesh products, most Christians will immediately say, well, he ate the Passover lamb or he ate fish. Those are the quick, off the hip ones most of the time. There's other ones too, but again, there's all kinds of translation issues, conversations that can be had around all of that. That goes so deep that, again, once you see it, you can't unsee it, which we can get into, but I just don't know if your audience, the level of interest to go that deep into scripture and everything. I mean, for example, one is people will say Jesus ate Passover lamb, but it never says that in the scripture anywhere.
Jesus ate what?
The Passover lamb. So every year in Jewish tradition, they sacrifice lambs for the Passover. It's celebrating their exit out of Egypt. The story of Moses when they leave Egypt from their slavery under Pharaoh. But it never says that in the scripture anywhere that Jesus ate Passover. It says that he told his disciples to prepare Passover, but then they enter the Last Supper. And what's on the table at the Last Supper? We all know, bread and wine, the Eucharist, So
why are there religious holidays like that and Thanksgiving where there is sacrifice of millions of animals?
Really good question. Well, breaking out of the scriptural and going a little bit more historical for a moment, through research done in really popular materials such as Guns, Germs, and Steel, Jared Diamond, I think the book Sapiens went really deeply into this as well. There's overwhelming evidence that the earliest tribal humans, when they started domesticating animals, that was its own glitch or its own split in the system where now they're domesticating these animals, vulnerable animals, namely they're not domesticating lions and cheetahs and these kind of things. They're domesticating the most vulnerable sheep and goats, etc. And when that started to happen, from that moment, we're creating a surplus of populations, overextension of resources, all of these elements that kind of led these tribes to then have to go outside of their territory to get more resources, to get more people, to get more cattle, which is, we talk about in the film, the word capital literally it means head of cattle, because your worth is determined by the heads of cattle you have. So these tribes had to go get the resources from other tribes, and that was the beginning of war. The tools that were used to domesticate the animals and for the agriculture were then used and bent to and for hunting, for war. And then from the war, you get women and children that are left over, and they become slaves. So slavery, all these pieces of the system that are devastating and oppressive, et cetera, are kind of linked to this moment we domesticated animals, which is another piece, again, historically, that we talk about. So, yeah. What was your original question right there?
Well, I'll say one thing. It's like why we killing, or why are we eating animals for Thanksgiving, Easter, and Christmas? Yeah. We're living in a patriarchal, sacrificial, ceremonial system. So when we have these big events for so long, okay, what else can we do? And the patriarch, well, we'll kill and sacrifice this animal to make it even more so of a ceremony. And, if you think of a matriarchal ceremony, it would not be going and finding some very helpless animal or like docile animal and rip it and kill it and then have a ceremony around it. That's very patriarchal ceremony. So it's continued on till today. And I feel that's a big part of why we're doing that.
And even in general, that's the whole thing with what was happening in the temple at Jesus' time. This was like a Hellenistic, more, Greco-Roman tradition that had infiltrated that system at the time. And, it's all, a lot of it too is seasonal fertility type things, this kind of idea, belief that these rituals bring, abundance or provision in some way with the gods and everything. And again, what I was getting to with that whole lineage or line of thinking is that there was some point where we don't know, the chicken or the egg kind of thing, which came first, but at some point this religious idea and this idea of killing animals became merged, probably partly because of the guilt, because, before this system, in more indigenous tribal communities, they see animals as totems, as, these characters and these traits and these beings to be honored and sacred. But then they had to start eating them and killing them and domesticating them. So they kind of have to shift to this other type of ceremonial, sacred act to be able to do it in a way that feels, I guess, more humane.
So they can kind of live with themselves.
Right.
Right. Do you think it's possible to be Christian and eat meat or animal foods and not be a hypocrite with everything that you've learned?
For me personally, yeah. Or I don't think it's possible, is what I'm saying. Yeah, for me personally.
I think to clarify too, is that once if you don't know this, like the pastors in the film, they're not being hypocritical because it's just not a question they've never even been asked. But once you go down that path and then you really are open and you see, wow, this is the truth, then if you continue to do it, I feel it's hypocritical to call yourself a Christ follower knowing what you now know. But it's once you go down that road.